Okay.
I'm on Facebook Live. I don't see anything else.
Okay, everybody, you everything good there? I think we're going well. Looks like Facebook. You need to pin my pin mine because it's coming across. Other people are popping up on the monitor. Not,
Hear you, Michael. I've got my phones in. There you are.
You should be able to hear me.
It's a little delayed, but that's all right.
Um, yeah, I guess you have to unmute me. Can you hear me now? Okay, and all right. Looks like we're working here. Um, Trying to make sure I've got everything functioning the way it's supposed to here. Just one second. Okay. All this technology, it's wonderful, but I think that's working. All right. You can hear me and everything's good.
They say they can hear and see you fine.
All right. Well, welcome to anybody there on Facebook or YouTube. I'm streaming this to Facebook and YouTube, and this is the meeting of the Plano Art Association, a monthly meeting. My local art group here in Plano, Texas, where we are, and it's sort of winter here in Plano today. It's been chilly, but we're going to have some fun tonight. I'm going to paint a little demonstration painting, and we're going to take a look here at what I'm going to do. This is a location here in our town. It is a part of the farmstead, the heritage farmstead village, and we have several buildings, and they have animals, and it's just one of those little things right in the middle of this suburban town is a little remnant of what used to be here in the days gone by when this was very much an agricultural farming area. So this building, it just was interesting to me the way the light was falling on it. You can see me if you're. Well, no, that's not my. That's okay. Um, you. That's again where I'm not a host, so that needs to be. I need to be pinned. I think there. Let's see if I can do anything. Let me just try it here. I'll try that. Did that work? Well, that's scary. So I'm the co-host now, huh? All right. All right. So it should be showing now, I think, right? Do you have it? No, no, you just popped up. Oh, there. Okay, I see it on my monitor. Everybody okay now or not? Yeah.
A little circle.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. So let's see.
But they will see you painting, correct?
Let me try something else here. Um,
You got it. So,
it is. So everything's okay now. All right. So where was I? So this is the subject for tonight, anyway. Um, and we are. I'm going to use this as a reference, which is what I usually try to do. I don't. I'm a representational painter. I'm somewhat of an impressionist, and I'm not a photorealist, and you know, I don't try to copy the exact colors, the exact situation that might be on a photo, especially in photography. So I am at this point looking at making some adjustments to it. Let me show you the view that you'll be seeing while I paint. That's the sketch I've done, and that is um, um, you know, the basics for how I usually do these sketches. Um, well, I have this feature on here that I can bring in comments, and so my friend Charlene, uh, she says, "Please no beach scenes in swimsuits, winter coats only." She is a funny person. She wants she doesn't want to talk about anything too warm. Anyway, this is the scene. You can see the photo up in the top right there. My palette's on the right. And if you have questions about materials as we go, we can get into that as we go. Let me just jump in here, and I'm going to do a wet into wet first of all, just to put some color on this thing. So I'm wetting down the whole page. Now we have in the Plano Art Association, those of you that aren't familiar with it, it's a good organization to join. They have shows, they have all kinds of opportunities, and it's not a strictly a watercolor association like some of the ones I belong to. So you can work in many different media. I suppose any media is probably right. I suppose. Um, if you look at this from another angle here, you can see how wet this is. So when it's that sopping wet, you don't have any control over it. And that's okay for this first portion of what I'm going to do. What I'm going to start off with is I'm going to start putting just some local color on some areas, and see what might happen with that. Every painting for me is a, a new adventure, an opportunity to try something different, or every painting is kind of kind of nerve wracking to get started in many ways, because you don't I don't always know. I don't do the same thing every time. Um, so let's just start with some tones in the sky, some blues maybe. Let's start with some. Now the building on this particular photo has an interesting warm tone paint on it. I'm not gonna try to copy that kind of color, but I will keep the building basically a warm tone. So let's just put some color on here. And this fence has a lot of that same color. I don't want to get, I'm not going to paint it as dark as that. Some of the same color can be in this path down in the foreground here. Um, the background over on the right side over here is going to be there's going to be some cool distant trees and objects, just some suggestion of some trees over here. So I'm going to put a little cool ultramarine blue and put a little green into it. Uh, this is not a real detailed portion here. It's just to get a little bit of suggestion of some trees, and maybe over here. And it doesn't matter if these bleed into each other a little bit. These colors bleed from one area to another. It really doesn't matter. In some ways, that helps to create some of the harmony that you want in your painting. You want a color harmony, and you want to be able to um, with watercolor, it's nice to have some of this color harmony placed in early. Then you don't have to think about it too much later. And also, let's see. There's going to be a tree. I've drawn it in this trunk at least fairly, fairly detailed. So there is a tree here, and that's a lot of times my trees and things like that. I don't put them in too much with too much detail because I might move them when I get into the painting. But I think I'll have to leave it alone this time. I've forgotten to ask exactly how much time I have. I know usually I get about an hour or so, hour and a half. I don't know if I actually found that out. Somebody, how much time do I have? Oh, that's more than I was anticipating. Um, yeah, I may not run that long. It depends on. There's one of my students that I have a lot of times in my workshops, Trina from Sacramento. She joins quite often from Sacramento. I've been doing these workshops, these like this, basically a 1 or 2 hour or 2 to 3 hour mini workshop, and I do quite a few of those. If you want to find out more about those, you can find out more on my website. Um, I'm going to do a little plug here. My next workshop, my actual workshop, is this coming Thursday and Friday. It's with the California Watercolor Association. It's a 2 day, but it's online, so you don't have to be in person. You can be at home and spend 2 days painting, and then you get to watch the video afterwards and work with that. So if you're interested in that, that's also on my website. I am going to take a hair dryer to this for a short while. What I'm going to do in the meantime, I'm going to mute my microphone so you don't have to listen to this, okay? So, so I was asked. So I was asked at the um, I was doing a demonstration last night over in Weatherford, Texas, for the folks there, and they asked a question there, which is often asked, and that is, what is one of the things that you like to really emphasize when you teach watercolor? And I think, or one of the problems that students have, and I think one of the main things is not drying the paper between layers. If you're going, like in this instance here, this is my first value. These are all my light values. So everything next is going to be middle values and then dark values. I usually work in three. Now, it doesn't always end up being just three. There's more subtlety to it than that, but I think of it in terms of three values. So if you start with, if you get your lights on first, and just get some color, some local color in all your lighter areas. That's why sometimes I'll start with a lot of the yellows and you get those in because those are the lightest and brightest colors if I want to emphasize that. Um, So anyway, that's an important part of watercolor. So drying it between them. Now this has got a little coolness to it, so it's still a little damp internally, but it's dry enough for what I'm going to do here. This paper is a 140-pound Arches rough. It's got a little more texture to it than the cold press. And I use rough cold press. I use Sanders, Waterford, several different papers. Um, let's see. What is this? What is the actual material? This palette, or is it the colors of my palette? Physical palette. This one is a Holbein portable. You know, folds up. I used to use a larger Pike palette because it was much more roomy. But I've been doing so much traveling, I had to have something that I could fold up and carry. So this one's versatile that way. It does have a fairly good mixing area, but it's metal, so it works pretty good. Doesn't seal up real tight, so I usually store it when I'm here at home. I store it in a container. It's actually made for storing acrylic paints. It's like a big flat Tupperware thing. Um, I put the palette right inside it with a wet sponge, and it keeps my colors very wet and moist. Because I like them that way. I don't like them too dried out. Some people prefer to moisten them while I paint, but okay. Thanks for the questions. That's good. So I'm going to go back into the top again and wet it a little bit and drop in some trees and some things that are going to shape this building a little bit. So the way to do that, I think, is just to re-wet part of this. And we'll see how that looks when we get it in there. Now, again, looking at it to see how wet it is. If it's real wet, I can, I could take a paper towel and pick up some of the moisture. Sometimes that's nice just to get rid of some of it. You want it wet for this stage, but not overly wet. And that's one of those things. How do you know how wet is too wet? Good question. That's, I guess, where you chalk that up to experience. So I'm going to make some color over here. I use a lot of burnt sienna ultramarine blue for my stew. I create a stew that I work from. This ultramarine blue and burnt sienna make wonderful browns and grays and blues. And I add some quinacridone gold if I wanted a little more green. And so I'll probably pick up a little quinacridone gold, drop some of that in there. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to drop in some color into this background again behind this building. And I want to keep it kind of interesting colors, but I don't want to have it overly, I don't want to have it dominate too much. So let's just put some color in. It can be, it can represent pine trees. It can represent any kind of, and I don't have to make it look like it's Plano, Texas either. It can be any kind of location. Let's see, this is getting a little too dry over here. I use a spray bottle and mist sometimes just to put a little value. And I'm just going to see if I can indicate a few trees over here and kind of shape this this building a little bit with that. And again, it's pretty wet, but not too much. So if I do these little marks with my brush without too much concern for forming them into things, the watercolor paper and the moisture will create a a reasonable representation of some trees. And I can use the side of the brush to create some more textural trees rather than the ones that are the pine tree types. Now this over here is a little bit more brown, so maybe I'll bring in a little more of that brown as well. Now this whole section over here is going to be covered up with some other tree things, so I don't really need to get too detailed or worry about it much at all. But let's drop in some darker values down in here around the side. Kind of push some of this a little darker. So I'm trying to capture the shape of this a little bit, and doesn't have to be real detailed. This is going to be fairly abstracted. I've got a picket fence here, so I'm going to use this dark background to shape these pickets. Negative painting. And I have purposely done made a horizon line right across here, drawn that in. If you can see that little pencil line right in there, that's my horizon line. That's the key to all of your perspective and all the just everything you want to have happen on this painting needs to relate to that, and people need to relate to that. If they're on the same plane you are, these people are going to have their heads about at that same level. So so here's a lady. Perhaps she's got a bonnet on because this is a heritage farmstead. I figured I would just sort of create a little fictional story about a couple of hands on the farm. Okay. Now over here, I didn't get all this finished. I should probably, it's still wet enough, I think. I can go down in here and let me mist that a little bit. Just a little bit of a mist will, when it's been damp like that, will keep the paint active, and you can just drop in color and it'll work right back into what was there when you left off. Depending on how dark you painted and what you're doing. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to create the pickets here. And again, you don't need to do every one, and you don't have to finish everything off. And the light's going to be coming across, and there's going to be some shadows on here, so I can just as well let some of those bleed right into these other colors, make a shadow out of it. It's sometimes watercolor is all about putting interesting patterns and textures and having the watercolor do what it does, which is to bleed and create interesting watercolor effects. It's not at least for me, I don't like to paint with a lot of precision and detail. So I'm not one of those that does a lot of fine tuning on my painting. A lot of little brushes and stuff. A lot of times it's more about what kind of symbol can you use to create an impression of a tree. What can you do to just create a tree in the distance? How simple can you make it? Hopefully you don't need to define everything. So what I'm going to do, so I got my lights back here. My lights here, I've kind of put a middle value around here to kind of make the building come a little more forward. So this building is now going to have my lights and darks, and this tree over here, and there's going to be some strong darks here. So my composition is going to have a variety of dark and light, hopefully throughout. So the photo has a distinctive difference in color in the shadows from different sides. Now this side of the building is getting a lot of, it's a north side, so the blue sky over here is putting blue into the shadow, and that's the, shadows do pick up the sky, and that is the perfect spot to show that is on this side here. Shadows all have a lot of variation, and I like to really try to make use of the shadows, make the shadows interesting. I'm going to take this is the end of a brush. This is still a little damp. I think I'll put a little indication of a tree here, just to break that up a little bit there. Okay. Now the colors on the building again are the trim is pretty dark, almost a burnt sienna. But we'll just let's see. We'll just see how that goes. I'm not sure if I'll keep it that way, but I do use a lot of burnt sienna anyway. So. All right. So here's this side is in shadow. Can be fairly dark. The light can catch that a little bit. So if I don't do it all, that's okay. And then up into the shadow and the eave here, I'm going to go right up in here. And then coming down on this side of the building, it's all in shadow. Now I'm just taking some moisture and dragging that down for now. But I'm going to take some cerulean blue, my sky color, and I'm going to drop some cerulean into there. Even though it's a warm colored building, there's, like I said, there's that color of the sky bouncing into that. And then I'm going to continue this idea of the pickets here with some negative painting right on this spot right there. A lot of times what happens is when light bounces off objects, it bounces up into the eaves and leaves the eave oftentimes warmer. I'm going to put some red in there just to put a little warmth into that eave, into that area of the shadow. Looks like I need a little more blue too, a little more color. So it's going to have a little bit of a colorful passage in there. So now this area of the edge of the building, there's a lot of different things going on there. I want to, since I didn't put a tree behind that portion, I'm going to want to take and let's see. I am going to want to create some darks up there. Again, not worrying about the precision of the color that was on the photo. There's several things where shadows are catching different portions of this right in here. Maybe I'll make a few of those lines a little distinct. And now, in order to make this be as dominant as I think it needs to be, I'm going to add a little bit of sepia right into this edge here, give it a little darker pop right in there, maybe a couple places, maybe a little bit in here. And you may not be able to see that very well on the screen, but that gives it a really nice distinction from other portions there. And now the biggest drama in this whole painting is the shadow. And the shadow, the way the shadows come off of this roof line and off of the tree. Now this tree over here is going to be casting some shadow as well, so I need to continue to make this shadow. I want to make the shadow work all together in one large shape of shadow. So we're gonna paint quite a bit of this at one time here. Probably use a little more color. And the light's coming just in this direction where I'm doing my brush strokes, and some of it's casting shadows down a little longer. Some of it, there's a wreath on the photo, but I have chosen to turn it into a lamp versus the wreath just because I just didn't want to make it as it was I guess I did the photo at Christmas or something. I'm going to put some other colors into that. Now there's some blues again. Go back to some blue. I'll do some cobalt blue in here. Put some blues into this. And also, again, where the light bounces up into the eave, oftentimes it's got red. So and that's because the light is bouncing up in there. Now, some of these areas, so when the light comes around some objects like leaves on a tree, they oftentimes bend and then create a soft diffused area of shadow. So some of these shadows need to have a little bit of softness to them. And at the same time, as I do these shadows, there's also a horizontal siding that's catching light shadow. So I don't want to paint all this. I don't paint every brick on the side of a house, and I don't paint every shingle on the roof. But sometimes just an indication of some of this siding is all you need to make it work. Okay, so this whole section right here is still very wet. I can change the color. I'm going to change it to some orange. Put some orange into it. Why not? I love the colors we've got going. I think that orange is going to be kind of pretty. I'm going to make sure that I don't leave it orange all the way down because it's pretty bright. I need some of that coolness that's going to happen in shadows. So I better get some other colors in here. We'll put some more blue back in there. And of course, blue and orange are complements, so you're going to end up with some nice grays. And there's some shadows coming all the way down across here. And this area down here is mostly in shadow. There's some shadows falling off of that fence, and actually looking like there's some of the pickets that show up as shadows here. All right. So I've got to see if my if all of these little areas are, you know, is it a logical shape? Is it pretty in itself? Does it express what I want it to say? In terms of how it's falling, I know I need some shadows on these areas of the this overhang here. Maybe this is still wet enough. I can bring some of this color right in here. Okay. So this door has pretty strong dark edge. It has this typical type of bracing. It has some. There are lines between where the boards run down, and there's other kinds of texture which I could get into later, perhaps. That door is fairly light on the photo. It's getting more light. It's faced more toward the sun than other parts of the building, so it's pretty light and bright. Let's do so down in here. This part of the shadow is going to be kind of a crisp edge, and there's going to be some other values of light bouncing in here, and color. And this is the little fence thing here. So I'm really just following the shadows that are in the photo for these parts right here, just to kind of define the shapes that you're looking at. So I'm going to put some of that orange. I really like the orange on the other side there. I need to repeat that, drop some of that into there, and let that just mingle. Probably should put a little cool in there though too, because it's does have to have some coolness to the shadows, but it's all relative. What's, you know, cool is it's relative, one thing to another. I could come back and touch up some of this later too. Even while it's still damp here, I can manipulate it a little bit here and there. So not all the edges are real hard edges. Now I'm going to put this tree eventually, and it's going to be casting shadow onto this as well. And question is, should I take and start the tree right now so it mingles right into that as I'm doing it? Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe I'll just keep working on the barn for a while. I've got in this, I did put some people in here, and I indicated a person in the doorway, kind of hidden in the shadows there. So let's put some color on the doorway. The doorway is very dark, according to the photo. And we'll just, in this case, assume the photo is correct in the way I want to do it. So I switch some colors around. Take my stew, add a warmer tone now. Get some more burnt sienna into it. And I want to make sure that I'm sort of keeping a little bit of an edge where this person is catching a little light. I don't want to paint him too much detail on him. It's just going to be a little bit of a suggestion that there's somebody in there. Thank you. And maybe I'll put some of that orange on him here too. Like I said, I'm not trying to indicate, just going to drop some water right in here and let some water run a little bit. It gives it some interest in there. And this man or whatever is, needs a little color on his face, put a little red on it, maybe on his arm. Maybe it's just enough to indicate there may be a person there. I don't want to make these little white edges too strong, but I can always come back and add those with some white paint later. It's almost as if he's just catching a little bit of light, and you can kind of tell there's a human in there. And it's not any kind of a odd thing. It's just a suggestion.
You said it was a relative, right? Things were relative. I wasn't sure if it was an uncle or a cousin.
Sandy.
It's a punny joke.
Punny. Put a little red up in here as if there's a little bit of light bouncing up in there. Now, this on the photograph up on the right side over here, there's a small sliver of light where this it's like a overhang here. I'm purposely made this wall a little bit off from what is in the photo, so it's shorter, and there's a little bit more light area here. I want that to be visible, and I want to take this character that I've done down here and use him in a kind of a silhouetted form, dark against the light. But I'll throw some color on him anyway. I've got a hat on him, so maybe it's a warm tone. And he has his face is going to have some warms. His arm and hand are going to be warm. But most of it's just going to be a dark silhouetted shape. So I'm just going to make some dark stew again. And just make this into a form that represents a person. And he's going to connect right into this dark part of the. I think I'll have him carrying a pail here or something.
Michael, what is the size brush that you're using?
Question is, what is the size brush that I am using? This one here is a small number 8 long round Princeton Velvet Touch. It's a smaller version of a bigger number 14 Velvet Touch that I use. These long rounds are really great for, I think, because they hold a lot. They're like working with a round, but they've got a tremendous, nice long point. You can get real fine details. And almost like a rigger at times.
So number 14 and number 8, is that what you said?
Yep, this is a number 8. So this dark in here is this dark in order to separate out from the background a little bit. Drop in some more color, and then there's these posts here. I want this side of this these posts and so on to be somewhat toned, a little bit more middle value than that very light value. So I'm just bringing some water up into them, putting some tone on them. A little bit over here. Now these are going to get darker over here as they get over to this tree. I want to have a kind of a dark area. Okay. This paint was still a little wet, so it was sort of separating out. I just wanted to manipulate it a little bit. I always tell my students to step away from the painting, and back up and take a look from a distance. So I'm going to just back up a second here. Looking at the painting itself, and I'm also looking at the screen, trying to determine whether it's making sense on the screen. So you are seeing something that's logical. I think it's working. Now there's a little bit of where did my palette knife go? I can take and do a little bit of, this is still damp up in here, and I didn't find my palette knife, but this credit card will work. I just need to do a little scraping and a little mark making into this damp where this siding is. It's one way to make you can come back to a light value from from an area that's already been painted if it's still damp enough. I don't think that's dark enough, damp enough. Okay. So the next portion of this is going to have to be the tree over here because I have to get that built in. And this is still just a little bit damp, but you know, if it was real wet, I would really like to build into it with some of the tree, but I think it's fine. Let's see.
Do you want to take a fun?
I think I'll turn off the microphone and dry it for just a minute. I like to, if I'm going to move on into an area on the top, I like to make sure these areas are dry because I've already gotten my hand in and made some marks on the lower portion of the painting which were accidental. And that, not that that's the end of the world, but it might be easier if I have those dry. So now I need to figure out how I want to create this tree in the foreground. How big do I want this to be, and how dominant? Now in the photo, there is a tree going up in here, going up off the page. Really, I need to decide how I want to, create this shapes and form here. I know I want to have it dark. I know I want this figure to be dark, and these are going to be coming forward. So I want to really hit that dark. So I just need to make it work here. Let's see. Well, we'll just take some more of the same stuff I've been using. Ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, make a nice deep rich mixture. Now thicker even than before. I'm going to add some neutral tint, make it even darker. Take all my dark colors, even put a little violet in there. All these really dark colors. I want this to be really dark and silhouetted, and not exactly silhouetted. I'm going to change it as I go, but so I'm just going to start down in here where this where I have this figure, and I want this figure to be fairly dark and silhouetted as well. She's not getting much sunlight. She's got a little bonnet on. At least that's what I was imagining here. Might look like a duck, I don't know. She's kind of leaning on that tree just a tad as she walks. Here she's probably holding up her apron and skirt a little bit, and then this is a long dress, and it flows here. and the shadows come across, and this tree is full in here, and the shadows are gonna come across here. Now I need to keep this very wet in here until I get down into these shadows. So this and this fence here is going to be dark as well, very silhouetted shadows. And I will be doing more with these shadows eventually here. This is just to get a place to start from. More dark. Some of you are probably not used to using so much pigment in your watercolor. This is in order to get real good darks, you have to use a lot of pigment, and you have to be willing to do it, willing to spend the money, the time to get this to work. So whatever kind of tree shapes I'm going to have here, I need to start with something, and I want to try to compose it as I go. This is going to have a tendency to I want it to come down into this front of this, over the edge of this building a little bit, be definite foreground. We put a little quinacridone gold into there now and kind of make it a little bit more greenish, but I'm not really looking for a green tree necessarily. And I think I'll just fill in that corner and knock that back so your eye doesn't go off that side. Let's see. And there's another tree over here that's hanging some branches down. Well, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take a brush, load it up with some pigment here, some quinacridone gold in it, blue, and I'm going to just begin to add some texture and some leaf shapes into the areas I've already painted in. I kind of built the shape first, and now I am going to sort of define it a little bit more with some texture and get some representation of leaves and the kind of things that happen. Hopefully when the light comes through, you're going to see, you'll see certain things happening when light bounces through the tree. Now I want this to come over further. And I think this needs to have a little more texture in here. So when I do this, I just use my hand here to shield part of it, but my right hand is just creating a little bounce in the brush, just enough to flick some paint off. And you know, the object is to control it enough, but not control it too much. So up in here, up in that area where there's a lot of emptiness, I'm just going to take some water and just spray some water into it. Let's just see what that does. Give it a variety of texture. You probably won't see that real well on the screen, but part of what I need to do here, I think, is to create a little more texture down in here. I wonder how I'm going to do that. Might have to work on that in a little while. Maybe there's something here where I can do something right in here. I used some orange and red on that in the building. I'm gonna choose to put a little bit of that into the tree as well. Maybe give it a little more fall feel. And as that mingles with the other colors here, it'll lose, you know, it won't seem like a real bright orange, but it'll give it a little bit of interesting texture and color. And this tree down here is definitely going to be warmth on this tree, especially on this right side. I'm going to just drag in some warmth on the right side. And my picket fence here has got to be a little darker than what it is. I don't have anything on there actually here. So this is going to be, it's going to catch some light. So my lady I've lost some of her form, but let's put a little warmth on her cheek. This is a little warmth on her hand. So the this pathway on the photo is a stone pathway, and I don't have that intention of doing it exactly like that, but let's just say that it's got some warm tones in this. So I created a little bit more of a ledge here for this path. More of a well, it does kind of have an edge, I guess, but I created more of an angle to it, a little more curve to the shape. And I need to bring across some shadows now into the foreground. I'm going to take a little moment here to I mentioned earlier that my next California Watercolor Association online workshop coming up Thursday and Friday of this week, 9 to 4 Pacific time. And I have also I have a series of online workshops available on my website. They're on demand. You get them anytime you want for as long as you want them. And those are available on my website. And then I have I've been fortunate enough to join Eric Rhodes and the crew through Plein Air magazine and Fine Art Connoisseur to do watercolor live. I'll be one of the guest artists who will be there, or not there. I'll be here, but it'll be part of the show that they're going to put on. So that'll be a lot of fun. I'm sure if you're a watercolorist, you'll enjoy that. Maybe many of you have been in on the Plein Air live, and then just last week was the Realism live that they did. So those are a lot of fun. So anyway, those are a little commercial break. Okay, let's see. I haven't. From over here, it looks a little different. Just you can see that the tree is pretty wet still on that side. You can see it's kind of interesting how it changes the look of it a little bit when you change the angle of the view. Let's see. I need to work on a couple of things. There's a lot of little details that need to be fixed up and dealt with, but let's start with, I just feel like I need to get some of the big shape things in so you can really see how it's going to take shape, and especially now that we've reached about an hour in, I don't know how much longer it'll take to really get it to look like I want it to. It might take a while for some of the finer things, but even right now, let me take and I want to take a couple of scrapes into some of this, get some tree branches with a credit card. I have this credit card because my account got hacked and I ended up having these charges. One thing I like about this happens to be Citibank, but I like the fact is that when somebody does start charging things on your account, they are pretty quick to call you and say, "Did you do that? Were you the one who made that charge?" And pretty easy to say nope, and then it doesn't turn into a big problem. That's good. So the credit card is a great way to bring light back into a dark area. And I'll show you in a minute. We can do some lifting as well to create some lifting areas. Create some lighter areas. So let me work on this overall shadow across the bottom here. Um, the foreground is on the photo is green grass, and I wasn't really intending to make it green grass out of it, but nevertheless, it might somewhat appear that way. But I need to make these shadows work, and these shadows are going to be cool. Again, the light hits an area, the sunlight doesn't, and the shadows are what they get light from the sky, and so they're going to be cooler than than everything else. So let's just say that coming off this tree is this shadow here, and it comes across. It maybe makes a little bit of a shape here, and there's some other trees over here. They're casting some shadows in here as well. There's shadows back in here. And there's a lot of shadow happening because of all the trees in the area. This is very much the story of this foreground here are the shadows. So let's see. And shadows direct you toward the sun is one of the things I talk about in my workshops is the effect of light in what I call solar perspective. What happens when you see that if your shadows will do the if you paint your shadows in a way that work right, they will point the viewer to where the sun is, and what that does, that creates the sense of reality, the sense of depth and reality in your painting that you can't get on a sunlit painting. You can't do it without having your shadows done in a way that's at least interesting and somewhat accurate. Now, this tree is going to put a lot more shadow over here. So I'm just going to darken this whole corner and throw some other colors in here. Let's get a little of that quinacridone gold in here to make it a little greener. And I think I'll put a little more blue and maybe some spots of the burnt sienna. I'm looking for just a pattern of some color. So that kind of killed the light over here, which is good because I didn't really want your eye to go off here. So my pattern now of light is coming through this way, which leads your eye in. And I have this dark shape up here, which is framing it a little bit. I think compositionally that works better. I don't know if you can see the colors as well in either of those angles. Did you all fall asleep out there? Oh, good. Good, good, good. Oh, well, I was concerned. I hadn't heard a peep for a while, so I thought maybe I. Oh, that's good. Yeah, well. Oh, good. Good, good. It's a, there's the thing about this kind of a painting here is trying to keep it simple without getting too carried away in all the things you can get into. So keeping your shapes pretty simple, and now as I go into some details, I can develop some things a little bit further. But I've got the basics. All the basic shapes are there. All the light and shadow is there. The main framework for the painting is there, and I have to look now to see, when I have this real dark area here, this dark area here, and this dark area here, how do those relate to each other? Do I need to bring them together somehow? Do I need to lighten something? Um, I think I need to. I think I need to go over here and behind this building back there, push that a little darker. Not as dark as this other stuff, but let's say probably a little bit more blue green back in the corner here.
We have a brush question.
A brush question, Cindy says.
Are you using only those two that you mentioned earlier?
No. Am I using only these two? No, I have those. I have some Escoda brushes. These with the gray handle. Those are Escoda Perla. Different sizes. Their lettering wears off. I think this is a 12. I used a big flat, of course, for the one area, and I used a mop for some of the big washes. This is a small. I think it's a Princeton mop. I'm not sure if I remember correctly right now. So I'm going to put a little color behind, a little, actually, color, but value is more what I'm thinking here is what kind of value can I use here to push this a little further back behind this building. The building in the background ended up kind of similar in value. So just that.
Excuse me, but it says your live video ended on Facebook.
Did it?
That's what it said. Maybe it was up at an hour.
Oh, I don't know.
Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. And there are some little details. Here's let's take a little bit of a burnt sienna again, and there's some edge, some trim here. There's some trim over here. So this is wet, so I just drag that wet over and just make some little indications of some I think it was yours that quit, Cindy. Somebody said they're on Facebook and it's working fine. I think it was just yours that quit. My wife, Cindy, is my right hand here. She keeps me honest and checks things and really does a great job. When we do the workshops, she's looking for comments from people and helping people with questions, and she's a treat. Some of you know my wife.
But I'm not as good as your right hand when it comes to painting.
Well, yeah, I could use another painting hand, I guess. Let's see. So this area of this light in there is a little bit. There's a little bit. I need something in there to make that a little more interesting. Let's see. Maybe I like the light, but maybe there's something else back in here that pushes back a little bit with something. Maybe it's maybe there's some more other kind of structure, fence, or something. It doesn't have to be specifically anything anyway. It's just something to draw it back a little bit, push that back a little. Somebody is giggling. Louise, you got your microphone on.
No, don't turn her off. I want to hear what her joke was.
So these stones here now, you know, again, some people would make very specific uh, stones out of this. I didn't know if I was going to do this, but might as well. But I'm just going to create some impressions here of stones, not paint every one and not get too detailed, just do some edges. And this is where perspective does come into play, because the ones closer to you are going to be more rounded and larger, and the ones further away are going to be more thin and smaller. So it's just like lily pads on a pond or something. You know, whatever it is, you can get perspective by what you do with your objects. I might put a little color on one of them, just a little tone here, one or two. Let's see. I'm going to take some of an opaque paint. This is called lavender. It's an opaque, and I'm going to see if I can't make this lady looks like she's in a leather jacket or something. I want to give it more of a feeling of just that it's in the shadow, and maybe it's lighter color, and maybe this bonnet is lighter. And now that's going to change as it dries. But you see how that has a feel of like it's a lighter color, like almost a white in a shadow. This guy here, I might want to put a little something with him. Maybe it's a bib overall sort of feel. The shadows off these trees are going to be hitting these pickets. And even though I'm just trying to show that there are some light and shadow areas on these pickets without getting too specific on where I'm putting them. Now, I've lost some of the detail that I would like in those. So I'm going to come back in there with some opaques. I also like to utilize some different techniques for things like this area of this grassy foreground. I've got a toothbrush here. I'm going to splatter some colors onto that, onto here, and see if I can just get a little bit of granular texture. And without having to work too hard. You get, grass shadows or pebbles or whatever it is you're trying to create here. I'll make some of these colors just go right into these rocks or those pavers, whatever they are. Don't like this guy in the window, in the doorway here very well. Over here, that area. I didn't get the question.
I didn't either.
To the left of the barn or to the right?
I don't know. It's supposed to be distant, a distant area. If I get too detailed in there, then it'll start to pull it forward, and I want it to stay back. So I don't know. Just going to put some other values onto this guy here. I don't want him again to be detailed. I just want it to be suggested. So not exactly happy with the way he turned out. Well, maybe he's maybe he's got a pitchfork or some kind of a tool in his hand, and he's
I think it's a chicken eggs basket.
not this guy.
Not that guy? Isn't that the egg picker?
No. So, I mean, back there, I could put something. I would be more apt to want to kind of finish off a little bit over in here, perhaps, and get something a little more interesting back in here. But, and again, this is just distant stuff, so it doesn't need to have much detail. Maybe it's just some trees. Now, one of the things that I can do is, as the light comes through the trees, it's going to hit a tree like this one right here, this big tree, and it's going to create some areas where the light is just catching the edge a little bit, and so I can lift off a little bit of this pigment. There's a lot of pigment on here. And again, a soft, diffused area of light coming through the leaves of the tree.
How wet is that tree?
The tree is, parts of it are dry, parts of it are still a little bit damp. And I can clean those up later as well, of course. But I can also take and create a, like right up in here, there's a branch that appears like it's there. And I can lift and create a light colored branch where the tree is getting light, and I can break it off. So there are people that say you can't, come back with watercolor. It's really not true. There's a lot of ways you can lighten up an area. There's a lot of ways you can paint, reverse painting. It does take a little bit of practice, I guess, and all that, but I think I'm going to make her arm a little more red here. Her arm. I don't think that's a very good looking bonnet. It's kind of what's supposed to be a bonnet.
I think it's a bonnet.
So I do use titanium white watercolor, or you can use gouache to finish off things. For instance, on these pickets, I felt like I kind of got a little carried away here with some of the darks, and I wanted to keep some of these lights up in here. You can. It's certainly legitimate. The only reason not to would, in some ways, would be, if you wanted to enter it into a particular show like the Transparent Watercolor Society, you can't have any opaques or acrylic. That's against their rules. So I have to be careful when I enter their show. I have to really watch, because I use a lot of now I use a lot of white and like this to highlight things or to bring out detail. This opaque over here is probably not legal in their book either. So, and then with figures like here, if I felt like I needed a little more light on this person here, a little light on her shoulder. Well, thanks for joining.
Keep painting.
And this guy here, I'm just going to, he won't be having any light hitting him, but I'm going to try to shape his head a little bit with this white to give a little more shape to the hat and so on, I think. He looked a little blocky. Not sure that's better, but. And my guy up here, I don't know about him. I don't know what to do with him. Maybe I'll make him thinner. He's holding that pitchfork or whatever it is in his hand.
It kind of looks a little spooky.
Well, yeah, he's kind of hiding out in the dark there.
I see him now.
Let's see. And I can always add a little bit of light hitting a few places on the, in an area with this. The white is just can add some things here and there. You don't want to get carried away with it, but it definitely can add another dimension to your painting. I also have some opaque colors that are Holbein colors, Juan Brilliant and Juan Brilliant 1 and 2. Actually, there's two different versions. One's a little more yellow, So for instance, this is a little more yellowish, and if I were to use this on the grasses here, for instance, and create the idea that light is bouncing through this picket fence, it's already the color of a warm sunlit grasses or something. I wanted his hat to be kind of yellow anyway. Let me put that on here. Like a straw hat kind of feel. That's a little too bright for under there. So those are some of the things that I would do. And also with back to the toothbrush. Now this is darker there. Now if I took, say I took some of this Juan Brilliant and spread that on here, I'd get some lighter texture over the top of this grass, and that won't be as bright when it dries. It'll settle down a little bit, but that will give you another level of texture. So I think I'm about at the end of this. Any other questions? That would be a good time. I'm gonna do a couple of little things here. I think maybe I'll add a little dark in here, a little dark thing here and there. Sometimes as the colors dry, you have to come back and add a little pop here and there. And my last step in my watercolor steps, when I have my videos, 7 steps, the last step is to sign it, take ownership, take pride in it, and on this particular day, this is the way it turned out. So another day it might not be like this. And so when you sign it, then you can wrap it up. Let's put I'll take the tape off, and you can take a look without the tape. It always looks better. I don't have a mat handy, but it'll look better without the tape. So again, I want to thank the Plano Art Association for sponsoring this evening's painting and the time. Invited me to be here and do this painting. It was fun. And if you're all in this area, in the Plano, Texas area, this is a great group to be a part of. So there is the final. You're very welcome, and I hope that we can do this again sometime, or perhaps it's I'm right here, so it's not a hard thing for us to get together and do things. But thanks so much, and I am a member of the Plano Art Association, so it's a fun thing to do for you all. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Have a good evening. Don't forget to vote. Yeah.